Hello. Welcome to Local Food, What, Why, and How. This is a presentation prepared specifically for EFNEP staff by Dr. Dara Bloom, Assistant Professor and Local Foods Extension Specialist with the Department of Youth, Family, and Community Sciences. Whether you're an adult or a youth program assistant, knowing how to program to include local food, as Local Food is our flagship program for cooperative extension, is important. During this training, we're going to be covering three basic questions. What is local food? Why do we talk about local food? And how can we integrate local food into our programs? In looking at what is local food, we're going to be asking, how do consumers and other organizations define local foods? How do we define local foods in cooperative extension? And when we talk about local foods, or why we talk about local foods, we're going to be exploring why there's an increased interest in local food and what are the economic and health benefits of local food. And then finally, in looking at how we can integrate local food into EFNEP programs, we're going to be taking a look at some strategies and available resources to include local food in our EFNEP programs. So let's get started by talking about how we define local food. In general, there is no single definition of local food. Individual consumers, businesses, and organizations often each have their own way of defining what local means for them. Here are a few examples of how different organizations and consumers might define local food. The 2008 Farm Bill defined local or regional as food that is grown and transported less than 400 miles or within the same state. This is the accepted definition for the USDA in any federal programs. This means that, say, any of our counties that border some of the other states like Virginia, Tennessee, or South Carolina, local food for you could actually come from another state by this definition. The North Carolina Department of Agriculture defines local food as food that is caught, raised, or grown in North Carolina. And this is an example of a state-based definition of local food. Consumers each have their own definitions of local food. For some consumers, local food means food that comes straight from a farmer. These consumers tend to shop at places like farmers markets or belong to what are called CSAs, or community-supported agriculture groups, where consumers pay a farmer a bulk sum at the beginning of the farming season and receive a weekly box of produce throughout the summer in exchange. Other consumers focus on what can be grown and bought within a certain mileage of where they live. This includes the popular 100-mile diet that you might have heard something about. Some consumers are more concerned about who grows their food and how. These consumers might prioritize buying from a small-scale family farmer or from a farmer who doesn't use pesticides, as an example. So as you can see, there are many different definitions for local food, and depending on what organization you're talking to or what particular consumer you're talking to, that definition could be different. But North Carolina Cooperative Extension made local food a flagship program in 2012, and when we did, we adopted our own definition. For the purposes of the flagship program, local food is defined as follows. For reporting and evaluation purposes within Extension, local foods are defined as foods that meet all of the following three criteria: produced, marketed, if the product is sold, and consumed in North Carolina. This means that in general, local food has to be grown, purchased, and consumed within North Carolina. If the food is coming from a community garden, for example, it probably won't be sold. So in that case, it just needs to be grown and consumed within the state. Now let's talk about why we talk about local food. As we've seen, there are a lot of different definitions of local food, so that makes it hard to generalize about what the impacts of eating local food are on the economy or individual health. However, we do have some research that shows positive effects, especially when local food is related to community engagement and development. Perhaps you have noticed a growing trend as consumers are more interested in where food comes from and how it was produced. There are an increasing number of books, documentaries, TV shows, and newspaper articles about things like the negative effects of processed foods or how our agricultural system leads to negative health outcomes. Excuse me. Research has shown that consumers have a lot of expectations about the benefits of local food, including freshness, quality, and food safety, as well as larger impacts such as health and supporting local economies. It is important to understand that none of these outcomes is guaranteed by buying and eating local food. But if we understand what consumers expect from local food, we can work to create projects and programs that meet these expectations and generate better benefits or greater benefits for consumers and producers alike. One of the biggest reasons that local food has become such a focus for organizations like Cooperative Extension is because we can have multiple benefits from a single project. And often local food projects can be created that help support farmers at the same time as they support healthy eating and community development for consumers. Local food projects can contribute to positive economic benefits. When consumers buy food locally, the money they spend tends to stay within the community. Local farmers and business owners are more likely to re-spend the money they earn at other local businesses. Also, local farmers and local businesses employ local people and buy some of the supplies they need locally too. As we said earlier, local food isn't necessarily healthier. However, research has shown that when consumers know the origins of their food or when they're involved in growing it, they are more likely to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables. And after all, isn't that one of our goals for EFNEP? This is especially true for community gardens, where people tend to increase the amount of fresh produce they eat, in addition to getting physical exercise. It's also true for consumers who can use their SNAP benefits at farmers markets, and especially true when those farmers markets have some type of incentive program that matches SNAP dollars to provide consumers an incentive to shop at a farmer's market. Excuse me again. So how can we integrate local food into EFNEP programming? A first step to incorporating local food in your EFNEP class is to become aware of what grows in North Carolina at different times of year and finding ways of using those products in your recipes and lessons. Even if you don't buy the products from a local farmer, helping people learn how to prepare produce that they could buy locally and talking a little bit about North Carolina seasons and where to buy local food is a great way to start getting people thinking about local food. In some cases, you may need to adapt the recipes you choose. For example, you can use kale in the place of spinach in a lot of recipes. And any of you who have played around with some of our EFNEP recipes, I hope that you've quickly learned that you can add fresh fruits and vegetables and exchange the vegetables that are there for a different vegetable with many of our recipes. One of the goals we had in creating those recipes was making sure that those recipes were flexible to what people had on hand. And this includes local foods in season. This seasonality chart from the North Carolina Department of Agriculture can help you start to familiarize yourself with what grows when. Remember, though, that this chart is for the whole state, so your particular region may vary slightly from the statewide average. The best way to learn about seasonality is to talk to your local extension agent or visit a local farmer's market to see what exactly is available. Another way is to partner with a local farmer or community garden to provide fresh produce. You can incorporate this produce into recipes and demonstrations for your classes. This requires having a relationship with a local farmer or community garden. In some cases, you may need to find outside funding to be able to purchase local food, especially if you're working with a local farmer. Now, a couple of options that I could suggest to you are we have the EFNEP endowment for which any one of you could apply. That endowment is for funds to support local programming. In addition to that, there's the FCS Foundation and the 4-H Foundation, as well as most likely many of you would have access to United Way funds locally. So there are many options that you could explore if you need to get funding for local foods. Check with your extension agent for help finding farmers and community gardens with which you can work. The 10% campaign encourages consumers to spend 10% of their food dollar locally. In North Carolina, we spend about $35 billion per year on food. So if everyone spent 10% locally, we could have a huge impact on our North Carolina economy. I'd like for you to pause the recording at this time and take a few minutes to think about how you might include local food in your EFNEP program. First of all, think about who are the partners that should be involved, and include partners in your office, partners in your community, partners at the state level. And what are some potential sources of local food? Do you know specifically of some farmers that might be willing to partner with you? Or what about a food pantry that receives produce, or possibly a community garden at a school? And then how can you work with others to increase accessibility and affordability? While our job is to really focus on individual behavior change of our participants, we always want to work with others to make sure that we can increase accessibility and affordability of local food to our participants. And so how can you work to support what that agriculture agent is doing, or what that FCS agent is doing, or what your local food coordinator is doing? Engage your Extension EFNEP associate in this conversation. Plan a meeting for all of you to come together to discuss these possibilities and engage your EFNEP associate in that. And then finally, once you've sort of explored what ways you might be able to include local food and partners that should be involved, think about a goal for including local food in your program. What percentage of your programs do you want to assure has a local food component? Pause the recording now and take a few minutes to think about this. Okay, I'm going to ask you to share that activity during your next conversation with your EA. With them, I would like for them to have a record of what our goals across the state are for local foods in EFNEP programming. I also want to make you aware of some resources that are available to you, and I'm going to send you some direct links that you can use, but these are some other less direct links for some of the resources. There really are a lot of great resources to help you learn more about local foods in North Carolina and really how we're promoting local foods through North Carolina Cooperative Extension. In addition to the resources listed here, you might want to check your county's website and click on the local food link on the left. And this can help you find out who your local food coordinator is for your county. Your local food coordinator can help you learn more about local food projects in your county and how to get involved. And another idea for you is, as you'll notice, if any of you are on Twitter, you can see that Dara Bloom does have a Twitter account. You might want to follow her on Twitter. There may be some information that she shares through Twitter that you'd like to share through your county's EFNEP Facebook page. And then also, make sure you like the North Carolina Local Food Extension Facebook page from your page, and also the 10% campaign. So those would be key pieces to add to your own Facebook. This is a snapshot of the local food portal. So this is our web page for local foods with cooperative extension. As you can see up at the top is the URL for how you would access that page. So if you wanted to bring this up quickly, please certainly feel free to do that. As you look at the top tabs, you'll see that there's a tab for nutrition and health. We may be changing this soon, but under this tab right now, what you can find are some additional resources that would be pretty specific to what you'll be doing, and that includes some cooking demonstrations. As I shared, the Nutrition and Health page in the local food portal has links to seasonal recipes, cooking demonstrations, as well as a link for the Eat Local, Eat Healthy brochure that helps to explain the connections between local food and health. This page may be reorganized in the near future into a separate nutrition and then health pages. So just be aware that this change may be happening soon, but all the great resources will still be available. And this concludes your training on local food programming, and this is the contact information for Dr. Dara Bloom. Please make note of this contact information. Should you have any questions regarding local food or local food programming, I'd like for you to feel free to contact Dr. Bloom directly. And as we do with every training, we do have all of our training based on research-based information. And so this is the research behind some of the statistics and information that I shared with you regarding incorporating local food into educational programs. Hope you have a good day. Looking forward to a great year where we see lots of local food programming happening throughout EFNEP.